Hilchos Nezirus Perek Shlishi, the laws of the Nazir vow, chapter 3. The topic for today is, how do we define how long a person needs to be a Nazir for? We know that if a person takes a vow to become a Nazir, he's forbidden to shave his hair, he's forbidden to drink wine, he's forbidden to become impure to dead bodies. But for how long? That's going to be the overarching issue of the whole parak today. And we're going to, as part of the discussion, we're going to touch on two very interesting historical figures who were Nazirim in their own right, and how that relates to defining the terms of Nezirus. So the Rambam begins, Stam Nezirus Shloishim Yom. An undefined term of Nezirus is for 30 days. In other words, Ketzad, says the Rambam, what does this mean, undefined Nezirus? Misha Amar Hareini Nazir. If somebody says, I am going to be a Nazir, and he doesn't give a time period, he doesn't say for how long, Ein Pachais Mishloishim Yom. It's no less than 30 days. Minimum to be a Nazir is 30 days. Ba'afilu Amar, even if he says, Hareini Nazir Nezirus Gedoyla Ad Ma'oid Harbe. I'm going to be a Nazir for a big term of Nezirus, very big, very much, but never specifies an amount of days. So even if the expressions that he used are big quantity, Harei Nazir Shloishim Yom, he's only going to be a Nazir for 30 days. Shaharei Loi Piresh Zman, because he didn't say a specific time, and if he didn't say a specific time, we always go for minimum 30 days. Beis Piresh Zman Pachis Mishloishim. If a person specified a time, but it was less than 30 days, Kigoin Sha'amar Hareini Nazir Yom Echad, or Yasara Yomim, or Esrim Yom, he says, I want to be a Nazir for 1 day, or for 10 days, or for 20 days. Harei Nazir Shloishim Yom. Says the Torah, you are a Nazir for 30 days. You can be no less than 30. She'ein Nezirus Pchusa Mishloishim Yom. There's no such thing as a Nezirus term less than 30 days. V'davar zeh halacha mipi HaKabbalah. This matter was learned by oral tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. Now the Radvaz, who's a commentary here in the Rambam, says actually there's a hint for this in the Torah. In the verse that talks about a Nazir, what does it say? Kadosh Yihye. He should be holy. And if you know Gematria, each Hebrew letter has a numerical value. The word Yiyeh, Yud Hey, 10 plus 5 plus 10 plus 5 equals 30. So Kadosh Yiyeh means he should be holy. For how long should he be holy? A minimum of 30 days. But the Rebbe says the Rambam doesn't bring this down because we don't learn halachas from Gematria. Even though Gematria is a beautiful way to learn things according to the Torah, and we talk about it a lot, but in terms of halacha, deciding Jewish law, we don't go for Gematria. Therefore, the Rambam writes that it's actually a halacha mipi HaKabbalah. It's a tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. Halacha Gimel Peiresh Zman Yoser Mishloishim Yom. If he specifies a time more than 30 days, Kagoin Sha'amar Echad Ushloishim. I want to be a Nazir for 31 days, or 40 days, or 100 days, or 100 years. Harei Nazir Kazman Shepeiresh. You must be a Nazir for the time period which you specified. Loi Pachis v'lo Yoser. No less and no more. So, no time, 30 days. Even if you say less than 30 days, it goes to 30 days. More than 30 days, we go exactly by what you said. If a guy says, I'm going to be a Nazir for an hour, so it's like you can't go less than 30 days. Harei Nazir Shloishim Yom. So he's a Nazir for 30 days, because that's the minimum. Amar Hareini Nazir Shloishim Yom v'shah achas. What if he says, I want to be a Nazir for 30 days and 1 hour? Harei Nazir Echad Shloishim Yom. So here we go 31 days. She'ein Nazir in shoyes, because we're not allowed to make vows that are binding just for hours. It goes by full days. So if you don't hit the 30-day mark, you got to go to the 30-day mark. Once you hit the 30-day mark, any more that you add, it just turns into 1 day. Halacha hey ha'omer Hareini Nazir mikan ad makom ploni. Person says, he expresses his vow in terms of space, not in terms of time. I'm going to be a Nazir, the time it takes to travel from here till this place, till X. If you're sitting in your house, you didn't begin a journey, you weren't actually traveling, Harei Nazir Shloishim Yom bilvat. So you actually become a Nazir for 30 days. That's it. Because what he meant to say was, I want to be a Nazir for a long time. Since you didn't say an amount of time, so you go by the minimum 30 days. But if you were actually traveling, so since you're actually on the journey, we take your word seriously. And so we see, If the journey to the place that you're going to is less than 30 days, Harei Nazir Shleishim Yom, so you're a Nazir for 30 days. If the journey takes more than 30 days, Harei Nazir Nezirus Achas Keminyan Hayamim, then indeed you are a Nazir for one term, the amount of days that you said. Whatever time it takes to travel, that's how long you're going to be a Nazir. Halacha Vav. Misha Amar Hareini Nazir Shtei Neziros. A person says, I want to be a Nazir for 2 terms. Oy Shalosh Oy Arba, or 3 terms, or 4 terms. So here, we're going to make him go through the process 2, 3, 4 times. Harei Nazir Keminyan Sha'amar, Kol Nezirus Me'an Shleishim Yom. You have to be a Nazir for the amount of terms which you said, each term being no less than 30 days. Ubesoif Kol Shleishim U'Shleishim, at the end of every 30 days, Megaleach or maybe Karbonosav. You have to shave and bring your sacrifices, like we showed the other day, this picture, from the temple chamber, where they would go, the Nazir would go and shave his head and bring special sacrifices. This process had to be repeated every 30 days. Umaschil limnos,
Those are Kohanim,
Yeah,
right?
the white guys, these are Kohanim, yeah. Umaschil limnos Nezirus Shni, and then you begin to count the second round of being a Nazir. Afilu Amar, even if a person says, Hareini Nazir Meya Elef Neziros, I want to be a Nazir for 100,000 terms. Nobody lives for 100,000 months. It's impossible to live that long. Doesn't matter. Start now and go one after another. You count one term after another term, either until you die, or until you conclude the number of terms that you said. A person says, I want to be a Nazir the amount of days there are in a year. So it's not that you're a Nazir for one term that lasts a year. You're a Nazir for that amount of terms. However many days there are in a year, that's how many Nazir terms you have to fulfill. If you said like the days of a solar year, you go 365 rounds of 30 days. If you said a lunar year, 354 days, so 354 rounds of 30 days. If you were unclear, you didn't define it, you go by the lunar year, 354. Why? Because we explained, we always follow the common language employed by people. Most solar years are 365, most lunar years are 354. At least in Jewish communities, a year means a lunar year. And therefore, if you didn't define it, you have to go by a lunar year. I guess today, most people refer to the solar year, right? At least the secular year, 2024, would be 365. You have to always check the time, what's accepted in the local country, at that time, at that place, and that will be the meaning of the vow. He says, I want to do 1.5 terms of a Nazir. So since we said there's no term less than 30 days, so actually what you have to do is you have to do 2 terms of 30. You have to be a Nazir for 2 full terms, 60 days.
Half a term?
Right.
5 days.
Well, so if you would have said, I want to be a Nazir for 45 days, that's 1 term of 45 days. But since the wording you used was, I want to be a Nazir 1.5 times, so you can't do a half a time. It has to be 2 full times. Amar Hareini Nazir v'yayim echad. He says, I want to be a Nazir and 1 day. So I want to be a Nazir is 30 days. The and 1 day is a separate term. You can't do 1 day, it has to be 30. Aisha Amar Hareini Nazir v'sha'a achas. So same thing. I want to be a Nazir and an hour. So I want to be a Nazir means 30. And an hour means you're committing to a whole other term. Harei is a Nazir, shtei Neziros. So you're a Nazir for 2 terms, 60 days. Amar, if a person says, Hareini Nazir ve'achas, I want to be a Nazir and 1, Harei is a Nazir shtayim. You have to go 2 terms of Nezirus. Hareini Nazir ve'achas ve'oid. I want to be a Nazir and 1 and more. Harei is a Nazir shalish Nezirus. He has to do 3 rounds of being a Nazir. Hareini Nazir ve'achas ve'oid ve'shuv. I want to be a Nazir and 1 and more and again. Harei is a Nazir arba Nezirus. You got to do 4 rounds. Hareini Nazir shleishim yoim v'yoim echad. But if he says, I want to be a Nazir for 30 days and 1 day, Harei is a Nazir Nezirus achas shleishim ve'echad yoim. You only got to keep 1 term 31 days long. Halacha tes misha hayushtei kitei edim mi'idinaisa. There are two sets of witnesses talking about you, and they're arguing over how long of a term you accepted to be a Nazir. Elu me'idin shenazar shtayim, ve'elu me'idin shenazar chamish. These ones are saying that you made a vow to do 2 years, and these ones made a vow that you're going to do 5 years. Or the meaning is 2 terms or 5 terms. So 2 months, 5 months. Just change the wording on the screen, 2 months to 5 months. Harei ze nazir shtayim. You must keep at least 2 of the terms. Shebichlal chamesh shtayim v'harei kulan me'idin b'shtayim. Because even the guys that are saying 5, included in 5 is 2. So everyone agrees on 2. 2 for sure you have to keep. The other 3, you can say, you know what, no, I don't have to keep those because I have 1 pair of witnesses saying that it's only for 2. Halacha Yud, Misha Nazar Shtei Nezirus. If a person takes a vow to keep 2 Nazir terms, Bein Shanadar Shtein Bevasachas, Bein Shanadar Zu Achar Zu, whether he took them both together or he took them one after another. For example, he said, Hareini Nazir Yoim, Hareini Nazir Yoim. I'm going to be a Nazir for a day, I'm going to be a Nazir for a day. A day is not long enough, you got to do a minimum of 30 days. So for each expression, you got to keep a full 30 days. Let's say, so you have 2 terms on the ballot, right? So you kept 1 term, you counted 130 days, you separated your sacrifices, you're all ready to go. Just before you went to the temple, you got a sage to release your first vow. And he indeed released it. So the first term which you just kept counts for the second term which you're still liable to keep. Simply bring the sacrifice and you're good, you're exempt. Even if you didn't do the releasing before, you did it afterwards. You already brought your sacrifice, you already shaved your hair, and then you go to the sage and retroactively nullify your vow. Also, the first term that you kept counts for the second term which has still not been released. The second term only goes into effect after the first one goes into effect. The first one, once you released it by a sage, it's as though it never existed. Remember the other day we saw that difference in the father and the husband and the sages, that the father and the husband, it's like uprooting a plant. They make it disappear only from here on out. A sage makes it disappear retroactively, as though it never was. So if it never was, then the term which you kept was the second term. Halacha Yud Aleph, Misha Amar Hareini Nazir Le'olam. If a person says, I'm going to be a Nazir forever. Hareini Nazir Kol Yemei Chayai. I'm going to be a Nazir for all the days of my life. Harei Nazir Le'olam. He goes into the category of what's called a Nazir Olam, a Nazir forever. That's different than a Nazir for a specified time. V'im Amar Hareini Nazir Elef Shana. If a guy says, I'm a Nazir for 1,000 years, even though it's impossible to live for 1,000 years, Harei Nazir Lizman Katzov. He goes into the category of what's called a Nazir for a specified time. Even though it's impossible to live for 1,000 years. But since in his vow he used a time frame, so he's called a Nazir for a time. If you would say a Nazir forever, you're called a Nazir forever. What's the difference in Nazir forever and Nazir for a time? What's the practical difference between a Nazir forever and a Nazir for a specified time? Shahanazir lizman. A person who is a Nazir for a time frame, Osir legaleach ad soif yemei nizroi, can never shave his hair until the end of his term. Shanemar, because it says, in the verse discussing a Nazir, it says, Kol yemei neder nizroi, all the days of the vow of his Nezirus, tar lo yaver al roshai, no razor should hit his head, ad melois hayamim, until the completion of the days. However, Nazir Olam, if somebody to begin with makes a vow that his Nezirus is going to stretch forever, there's a special rule which says, Im hichbid sa'arai, if his hair gets too heavy, meikal betar mishneh masar chaydash, he can take a haircut every 12 months, just to lighten his hair. Umevi karbanai, shalish behemis k'shei galeach, and he needs to bring a sacrifice, the 3 animals that every Nazir is required to bring whenever he shaves. Shanemar, because it says by Avshalom. Avshalom was David HaMelech's son, and he was a Nazir forever. It says, Vayihi miketz yamim layamim asher yigaleach. It would be at the end of every year when he would shave. Ki kaved alav v'gilchay, because it was too heavy, so he would shave the hair. V'Avshalom Nazir Olam haya. Avshalom was a Nazir forever. So he was able to shave his hair once every year. V'davar zeh halacha mipi HaKabbalah. Halacha hi mipi HaKabbalah. This matter is a halacha l'Moshe miSinai. The fact that there's a difference in a Nazir forever and Nazir for a time frame is biblically mandated by tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu. The Nazir Olam Shenitma, if a person is a Nazir forever and he becomes impure, Hareza Mevi Karban Tuma, Umegaleach Tiglachas Tuma, Kamei Nazir Lizman Katzov. He has to bring the sacrifices that a Nazir would bring when he becomes impure and shave his head like he would when he became impure, as we're going to learn later in these laws. Just like a regular Nazir. So the only difference between a Nazir forever and the Nazir for a time frame is whether they can take a haircut. The time frame guy can never take a haircut. The forever guy can take a haircut once every year. Talking about people that were Nazirs forever, says the Rambam, Shimshon Haya Nazir Gomer. We know Samson, Shimshon, the great judge of Israel, was a Nazir. Right. That was the way he lost his strength. In the end, he wouldn't reveal it to his wife, and finally he revealed that he's a Nazir, and because he doesn't cut his hair, that's where his strength is. He cut his hair, and that's when he lost all his strength. Right. Says the Rambam, you should know, halachically, he wasn't a complete Nazir. Shaharei loy nadar ben Nazir, because he never made a vow to actually become a Nazir. Ela hamalach hifrisha min atuma. The angel who spoke to his mother before he was born separated him from being able to become impure. The angel told the mother, your kid is going to be a Nazir from the day he's born. So because he never took the vow himself, it didn't have the same rules as a regular Nazir. V'ketzad haya dinai. What was his law? Haya asur biyayin v'asur b'tiglachas umutar lihitami lemesim. He was only forbidden to drink wine and to shave his head, but he was allowed to touch dead bodies. This is also an oral tradition that came from Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. That's why today, this guy, Ohad Turjaman, who's an actual real-life Nazir, he's a Nazir Shimshon. Because today it's pretty much impossible to avoid ritual impurity. So he couldn't take a vow of full Nezirus because that would require him not to be able to become impure, which is basically impossible. So he took this vow of Nazir Shimshon, where he keeps the wine and he keeps the haircut, but he doesn't keep the corpse thing. Now,
how long did he take the vow?
Lifetime.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, the Rebbe has a long talk discussing this halacha. Without getting into the details of the weeds, the bottom line is that the Rambam's wording is precise. He says, Hamalach hifrisha min hatuma. The malach separated him from becoming impure. The angel doesn't have the power to make him into a full-fledged Nazir. There's a big debate. How did Shimshon become a Nazir? You have to take a vow. Someone's got to do it. His mom couldn't do it because a mother, we learned yesterday, cannot make her son into a Nazir. Only a father can. And we don't find any record in the Tanakh that his father made him into a Nazir. So how did Shimshon become a Nazir? So the Rebbe explains, it's a pretty novel explanation, that, and I actually mentioned the concept yesterday, that there's two elements to being a Nazir. There's what's called Kedusha and Hafrasha. Essential holiness and abstention, being separated from the regular mundane. So the holiness, the Kedusha, is what nobody besides yourself is able to place upon you. But the Hafrasha, the separation, the obligation to behave in a way that abstains from wine and shaving, that the angel was able to do. And then, when Shimshon turned 13, and he didn't protest this continued mode of behavior, that's when the holiness retroactively applies to him. There's a little parallel to this when it comes to the laws of conversion. A baby or a kid can be converted by the court. They'll put him in a mikvah, they'll give him a bris. At that point, though, he doesn't have what's called the Kedushas Yisrael. He doesn't have the holiness of the Jewish people. He simply has to behave like a Jew. Then, when he becomes bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah, the moment that they become bar bas mitzvah and they don't protest, then, retroactively, they become fully holy like a regular Jew. So the same was by Shimshon. The malach hifrisha min atuma. The malach got him to abstain from these impure things. Then he kept living that way. After he turned bar mitzvah, that caused that the kedusha would now go upon him retroactively. Yudalid lefichach, therefore, because Shimshon had a separate law, not like a regular Nazir, Misha Amar, Hareini Nazir Kishimshon. If somebody says, I want to be a Nazir like Shimshon, Hare is a Nazir, mina tiglachas mina yayin lo elam. So he's a Nazir, he must abstain from shaving and from wine forever. Ve'ene megaleach kol shnei masar chodesh kishar nazir elam. He cannot shave once every 12 months like any other Nazir forever. He can never shave. Umutar lihitami lemesim, but he's allowed to become impure to dead bodies. But if he later clarifies and says, I didn't mean I want to be a Nazir like the biblical Samson. I have a friend whose name is Shimshon. I want to be a Nazir like him. Einay Nazir. then he isn't a Nazir at all. Umisha nadar Nazir kishimshain, eina yachal lihishoyal al nidroi, shenezirus Shimshon la'ilam haisa. Anybody who takes a vow to be a Nazir like Shimshon can never have a sage release it, because Shimshon's vow was forever, and if it's forever, you can never undo it. Halacha tezvav ha'omer. If somebody says, Hareini kishimshon, I am like Shimshon. He doesn't say I'm a Nazir like Shimshon. I am like Samson. Kiben Manoach. I want to be like the son of Manoach. That was Shimshon's father's name. Kibal Delila. I want to be like the husband of Delila. Kemisha Akar Dalsais Aza. I want to be like the person who uprooted the doors of Aza. Shimshon was trapped in there for a night one time. And he simply went over to the city gates, lifted them on his back, and walked away. Kemisha Nikru Plishtim Es Einav. I want to be like the person who had his eyes poked out by the Plishtim. Harez a Nazir ki Nezirus Shimshon. He needs to be a Nazir like the rules guided by the Nazir of Shimshon. Even though he never said, this specific guy. Someone else could be the son of Manoach. Someone else can have a wife named Delilah. Someone else could have lifted up the gates of Aza. But simply speaking, you probably mean the biblical figure who did this, and therefore you have to be a Nazir like Shimshon. Halacha Tazayin, another biblical figure, Shmuel Haramasi Nazir Eilam Haya. Shmuel, Hanavi, from Ramah. He was also a Nazir forever. And here too, the Rebbe has the same commentary, that in the Tanakh we only find his mother making him a Nazir, Chana. But a mother cannot do that. So when did he actually become a Nazir? So the Rebbe says the same thing. His mother took the vow to have him abstain, the hafrasha element of Nezirus. And then when he continued behaving the way after Bar Mitzvah, the Kedusha came upon him, lemafreya, retroactively. Lefichach, therefore, ha'omer, if somebody says, Hareini ki Shmuel Ramasi, I want to be like Shmuel from Ramah. Keben Chana, I want to be like the son of Chana. Keben Elkanah, son of Elkanah. Kemisha Shisef as Agag Bagilgal. I want to be like the guy who sliced up Agag, king of Amalek, in Gilgal. This was last week's Haftorah. Right, that when Shaul HaMelech didn't kill every last Amaleki, he left Agag, the king. Shmuel was very upset, took away the kingship from Shaul, and then himself, he went himself and he killed Agag. Any other similar expression, which is simply put, attributed to Shmuel, he must become a forever Nazir. We don't say he probably meant somebody else who did the same things as Shmuel Hanavi. If somebody says, I'm going to be a Nazir like the amount that fills this house, or the amount that fills this box. But can I say, we have to clarify what he means. If he says, I never meant to be a Nazir all my days. I simply meant to make the Nazir into a long term. So since he didn't say a specific time frame, he's a Nazir only for 30 days. But if he said, no, I meant like the fill of the box or the fill of the house, undefined, I didn't mean it to make it a long Nezirus. We treat the box, as in the top right corner here, as if it's full of mustard seeds. And he has to be a Nazir for all his days. But he could shave his hair every 12 months, and bring sacrifices, like any other Nazir forever. If somebody says, I want to be a Nazir the amount of times that I have hairs in my head. So like the amount of dust on the earth. Or the sand of the sea. It's as though he said, I'm going to fulfill Nezirus terms the amount of hairs that I have in my head. So the amount of dust that there is on the earth. Or the amount of sand on the sea. Which basically means he's got to go 30-day periods to the end of his life. He may shave, or he must shave every 30 days. And begin to count a second term, 30 days, then shave again. And so too until he dies. Between every period of shaving, he cannot drink wine, nor become impure to dead bodies. If he drinks wine or becomes impure even the day he shaves, he gets lashes biblically. If somebody says, I'm going to be a Nazir if I eat this loaf. he repeats his words. I'm going to be a Nazir if I eat it, a Nazir if I eat it. The Achla, and in the end he eats it. He's obligated to do as many terms as the number he said. Said 3 times, 3 terms. You count one term after another. Every one for 30 days. And you shave every 30 days and bring the sacrifices as a regular Nazir would do after completing his term.